My name is Kate Siber, and I'm the author of 50 Adventures in the 50 States. Looks like this. I am in the Quarto classroom / gymnasium today to teach you a little bit about geography while we participate in physical education. It sounds goofy, and it is, and you are invited to participate. So 50 Adventures is a book that takes you on a whirlwind, action-packed tour of the country. It's illustrated by Lydia Hill, and we hit one big adventure in each state. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the landscapes of the United States, and we're going to hit some big adventures on our way, and I'm going to invite you to participate in acting them out. So, you might want some room in your living room, or you could even take this video outside so you have plenty of space to move around. You don't need to wear anything special or do anything special. You just have to have some enthusiasm and a willingness to have fun. So we're gonna start our action-packed tour in Maine. And Maine is really far northeast in the country. It has big pine trees, huge forests of pine trees and big mountains, and it's really cold, so there's lots of snow in the wintertime. So what can you do there? You can ski. So grab your poles in your hands, your skis are on your feet, bend your knees, and careen down the mountain. What do you think skiing looks like? Even if you've never done it before, see if you can act it out. So here we go, we're going through all the pine forests. Maybe you hit some moguls and you're jumping around. You might even hit some slaloms. While you're skiing, you might see some of the wildlife in Maine, like raccoons or deer. You might see birch trees. Keep skiing, and we're gonna head farther south to Connecticut. It's another New England state. And Connecticut is a state that has rolling hills, meadows, it has some snow in the wintertime, and one thing you can do there is snowshoe. So how do you snowshoe? You have big snowshoes on your feet. You can strap them in, and then pretend that the snow is really, really deep, and you have to stomp around. You may have poles in your hands. So if you have poles in your hands, try pulling while you stomp through the big, deep snow. So you might see some foxes, or an owl, or a beaver as you go through the rolling, gentle hills and forests of southern New England and Connecticut. And while you're snowshoeing, I'm going to tell you about Florida, the next stop on our tour. Florida has a subtropical humid climate, and it has tons of beaches and reefs. So what can you do there? You can swim and snorkel. Do you know how to swim? Swim in whatever way you know how. You could do the breaststroke, or you could do the doggy paddle, you could do the crawl. While you're swimming in the beautiful shimmery water, you might see some fish. And if you want to see the reefs up close, you can put on your snorkel and put on your fins and dive underwater. So what does it look like down here? Well, you might see a sea turtle. You might see beautiful hard corals and soft corals that sway in the swells. You might also see some barracuda and some beautiful, colorful reef fish. Come up and take a breath. Keep swimming, and I'll tell you about the next state on our tour. This state is in the middle of the country, Missouri. And in Missouri, there are more than 7,400 caves. That's why it's called the Cave State. So, what do you do in caves? Sometimes you can walk through big, huge chambers. Other times, you have to shimmy and squeeze. So what would it be like to shimmy and squeeze through a teeny tiny little passageway in a cave. You might crawl around on all fours, or you might just squeeze and stretch, like you're going through a jungle gym. What might you see in a cave in Missouri? You might see little teeny critters, like little shrimp-like animals. You might see a grotto salamander, which has transparent skin. Can you imagine if we had transparent skin and you could see our insides? That would be totally weird. Farther north, we're going to Minnesota. And Minnesota has vast boreal forests and tons of lakes. It's called the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And what can you do there? In the wintertime, you can dog sled. But I think it's way more fun to pretend to be the dog than the human. The human rides on the back of the sled, but the dog gets to run. So you can get on all fours and pretend like you're a Siberian Husky sled dog, or just pretend to run. So run back and forth. What would it be like to be a sled dog running through the vast boreal forests of Minnesota? You'd probably sniff some things on your way. So pretend to sniff. You might sniff a moose, or a lynx, or even some wolves. There's 1 million acres of wilderness up there where there are no cars or houses or roads of any kind. Keep running like a sled dog. Just west of Minnesota, you'll find North Dakota. And North Dakota has a very different landscape. In some parts of North Dakota, there are vast grasslands and badlands. Grasslands are just like what they sound like. They're giant areas of prairies where there's grass as far as the eye can see. And the badlands are vast areas of crumbly rock formed into domes and hoodoos and all sorts of weird shapes. And what can you do there? You can mountain bike. So pretend that you're on a bike with big knobby tires and shocks to go over all the bumps, and pretend like you're pedaling your bike through the badlands and the grasslands of North Dakota. And what might you see on the way? You're turning your bike through these grasslands. What would it be like to bike through this wild landscape? You might see some bison or falcons soaring overhead. You might also see some elk. You might also have to cross some rivers, so watch out. You might get wet. The next state that we're going to go to is even farther west. Keep riding your bike. And this state is in the Rocky Mountains. Welcome to Colorado. Colorado has lots of very steep, jagged mountains, and it gets very cold and snowy. And in the southwestern corner of the state, you can try a new sport, ice climbing. And ice climbing requires a helmet. Put on your helmet. Big, huge boots. It also requires crampons, which are spiky metal plates. So put your crampons onto your boots, and then you'll have an ice axe in each hand, and you'll be able to scale a frozen waterfall like a superhero. So pretend you're scaling a frozen waterfall in the wilds of southwestern Colorado. Chink, 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 chink. And while you're doing that, I'll tell you about the next state on our list, which is Arizona. And Arizona has lots of desert. It's southwest of Colorado, and it has beautiful sandstone canyons. And here, what we're going to do is we're going to go on a horseback ride with a Navajo guide in Canyon de Chelly. So what's it like to ride a horse? Maybe you've ridden a horse. You might even move around on your horse. Remember, it's more important to have fun and be enthusiastic than do it right, whatever that means. So we're riding through the wilds of Canyon de Chelly in Arizona on a horse. Feel the breeze through your hair. You might see some ancient petroglyphs or pictographs, rock art, on the walls of the canyon that people created years and years ago, like thousands of years ago, before Europeans arrived in this country. You may also see beautiful stone palaces built by the ancestral Puebloan people. Keep horseback riding, and I'll tell you about California. We've made it to the West Coast. And California has some 840 miles of Pacific shoreline. And one thing you can do there, because there are lots and lots of waves, is surf. So pretend you have a giant surfboard right next to you. You're going to take your surfboard under your arm and you're going to shuffle out, wading into the water. You might encounter some stingrays, so you want to make sure you shuffle in the sand to make sure they know that you're coming. Okay, you're deep enough now. Put your surfboard on the water, put your belly on your surfboard, and start paddling out. And the water is pretty cold. You have to keep moving in order to stay warm. You might see some gulls overhead. You might also see some dolphins. And then if a wave comes, what do? You push up, jump up, and surf. What does surfing look like? It feels a little bit like flying, so pretend to surf with either your right foot forward or your left foot forward. Now, as you're surfing, we're going to go farther north to Washington State. And Washington State also has beautiful Pacific shoreline. In the San Juan Islands off of the shore, you can kayak. So sit down in your kayak, wrap your spray skirt around you, secure it, and then pretend to kayak. What might you see in the San Juan Islands of Washington State? You might see humpback whales, or orca whales, or bald eagles soaring overhead. They like to nest on these rocky, rugged, forested islands. You might also see in the beautiful clear water jellyfish, like the famous egg jellyfish that looks like a fried egg. Okay, now get out of the kayak, nice, and stretch your legs. We're going to end our tour in Idaho. And in Idaho, there's tons of geothermal activity, which means that there are more soakable hot springs in Idaho than any other state. The earth warms the water underground and it bubbles up to the surface and collects in rocky pools. So we're going to pretend we're in Idaho, sitting in an alfresco bathtub. Close your eyes, relax, take a few deep breaths. You're outside in a beautiful forest. And that concludes our tour. So thank you for watching. I would love to see your experience. You can buy 50 Adventures in the 50 States anywhere books are sold. And if you want to share your experience, you can tag me. I'm on Instagram at Siber, Sibereye, and hashtag Quarto Classroom. Thank you.